Hi, I'm John from the Christian Century, and I'm joined today by one of the Christian Century Voices columnists, Debie Thomas. We're going to chat about a recent piece Debie wrote for the magazine called What is Worship For? My guess is many of you out there, readers, you already know and love Debie, but for those of you who don't, Debie, could you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure. Besides being a Voices columnist for the Christian Century, I serve as a minister of lifelong formation at St. Mark's Episcopal Church, which is a parish in California near San Francisco. Am also the author of a couple of books and the mother of two all grown-up children, and live kind of near the beach in near Santa Cruz, California.
Very cool. Well, thanks for being here today to chat.
Thank you. It's good.
Um, Yeah, this article, I think a lot of people already, we just posted it at the time of this recording, but already people are really excited about this piece. So I'm excited to chat with you about it. It's as the title would indicate, it's about why we worship. And you mentioned in the piece that growing up, you never ever thought about why we worship. It was so just taken for granted, such a part of life, like breathing. And I'm just curious. You clearly have now started to wrestle with. At some point, you started wrestling with this question because you wrote us this great essay. What brought that about? What prompted you to begin thinking why should we get together and worship God?
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, I grew up in such a thickly Christian home and community where everything about church and Christian life was all these are the things you do. You know, you go to school Monday through Friday, you go to church on Sunday. There was certainly no saying no, like you just did it. And so all of that, I think, as a child and well into being a teenager and young adult, I never questioned any of it. Um, I was not around many people who did not do that, for whom it was not the norm. And I think, like a lot of things, pieces of your life get challenged when you become a parent. And if you're trying to parent differently and give your kids maybe a little more leeway and they get to make some choices about how they want to spend Sunday, those kinds of things, there was that inevitable moment when my kids turned to me and said, why do we do this? Like, why do we go to church? And why specifically does God need us to keep saying nice things about Him and to Him over and over and over again? Like, that seems kind of arrogant. And I mean, it was such a like kind of blow to me. It had never occurred to me to even ask that question. So then, of course, I had to think about it and come up with an answer. Like, is God actually demanding this because there's some need in God that God needs the ego reinforcement of humans constantly bowing down and complimenting Him? So that's what prompted the question.
Yeah. And you mentioned in the article, you said there's another way you could frame this question: does God need us to continue giving compliments and praise? And that's to say, is God a megalomaniac or a narcissist? And in the essay, you say no, God is not. And you say that part of the reason why we can say we should get together to worship, but no, God is not a narcissist, is that the need is not on God's side, it's on our side. We need to get together and worship God because of the way it forms us. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little more, like what is this work of formation that you think worship is doing or should be doing or could be doing in our lives? And why is worship well suited to accomplish that kind of formation?
Sure. So for me, part of that was just unpacking the word worship, maybe taking it out of its very kind of heavily Christianese, kind of language, and really like what actually is happening when we worship, right? We're giving something or someone our focused attention. We're putting away other distractions, and we are deciding that this thing is important enough to warrant time and concentration and effort. Um, and so once I began to think about worship that way, I realized I'm actually doing this all the time. I'm worshiping all sorts of things, right? There's so many things in my life that demand or invite that level of concentration and effort and intentionality on my part, whether that's my favorite TV show that I'm binge watching or my phone, stuff online that I like to follow, celebrities, TV stars, athletes, whatever it is. Um, there's a quality of adoration and like focused attention that I give to these things. And so if I think about worship that way, it's reciprocal. As I give my attention to whatever that thing or that person is, their values, their who they are or what they are is also then in return impacting me. I'm being shaped by those things. Um, I love the things I give attention to. And so to worship God is actually a practice of growing in love towards God and allowing who God is to shape who I am. So I think that's the way the kind of relational reciprocity formation happens.
Mm, that's good. Unfortunately, one of the things I'm hearing you say is a very good, helpful invitation for me to think about the ways that I'm being shaped by the shows that I binge watch. So I will.
I will confess openly that this is this is an area where I need to practice what I preach. Yeah, and
Mm,
I'm not for a moment saying that we should not enjoy these things. Like these are in the world, and they're many of them are really beautiful gifts, and it's all wonderful. But it's in terms of proportionality, I think, and in terms of being unconscious of how these things actually shape us and affect us and
mm,
make us who we are. I think it's important to bring that into our consciousness, and then to think, okay, how does being in church on Sunday morning or worshiping at home with my prayer book or whatever I do, how does that also soften me or make me more
mm.
attentive to people in need or all the things that our tradition calls us to.
Yeah, thanks. At the very end of the piece, you write a little bit about Jesus and some of the specific moments in Jesus's life and ministry. And one of the points you're making there is, I think, is of course God isn't a narcissist, because look at Jesus. We view as the incarnated God, uh, a self-emptying, a sacrificial person. I'm curious if you could just say a bit more about Jesus and the ways that Jesus relates for you to these big questions of why do we worship and what is our worship accomplishing? Like what is the role of Jesus in all that?
It's a great question. I mean, I think besides the fact that like you just said, Jesus models for us, shows us who God is, that God is humble and loving and um, wanting to engage with us in a very intimate way. So there's that piece. There's also just the fact that Jesus himself worshiped, which is something, to pay attention to. Like Jesus needed to do this, and it was part of his practice, even as he had such a busy, incredibly crammed life of people following him all the time, needing him desperately all the time. We have so many records in scripture of Jesus taking time out to be by himself, to pray, many times when he publicly acknowledged God's goodness, Lord's Prayer, right? Hallowed be your name. There's like a lifting up of who God is that he himself did, which I think is a model for us. Um, and I think for me too, that just the fact of the incarnation, that God um, has valued and elevated the fact of our physicality. And because one of the things I love about worship is that it's not just a mind thing, it's a full body. We bring our full bodies, our full selves into postures of humility and submission and adoration, whether we do that by kneeling or crossing ourselves or just sitting in a pew and putting our bodies in a place of worship. That's I think that's important, and I think the incarnation shows us something about the importance of bringing our whole selves, our whole bodies into that kind of posture with God.
Mm, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
we could talk all day, but this has been really good to get some more thoughts from you on this piece and this topic. For those of you out there who have not yet read What is Worship For, the link will be below in the video description, along with a link where you can check out Debie's books and order them as well. Debbie, thanks so much for chatting today.
Thank you. It was lovely to chat with you, John.